This week's Serious and Silliness podcast will be 1 week old, and I have a very special interview. Dave Palumbo has been somebody that I have admired and idolized and learned from a great deal since my early 20s. He has been a bodybuilding icon, a bodybuilding fixture, if you will, for many years now. He was a great amateur bodybuilder. He actually never turned pro, but that just led to his status, if you will, that he never turned pro and he was that great and knowledgeable. The man went to medical school before becoming a bodybuilder. His intelligence in bodybuilding is next to none. It's uncanny. It's unbelievable. I mean, the information is unreal. After he stopped bodybuilding, he started RX Muscle, which is a tremendous YouTube and podcast. He has Species Nutrition. He has a clothing line, Species clothing line. He actually has a personal training certification. He has a guru class he does a couple of times a year where you could join in and you could do it right online. And it's an all-day thing. It basically teaches you how to train bodybuilders to be a guru, if you will. I was so happy when he said yes to me letting him interview him. And I saved it. I interviewed him 2 weeks ago, but I saved it for the 1 year anniversary because that's how excited I was. So here it is, my interview with Dave Palumbo. All right, so here we are. And I finally have Dave Palumbo from RX Muscle on my show, Serious and Silliness. And Dave, it is an honor because you are one of the two guys that inspired me to start my own YouTube channel. How you doing, man?
Hey, as long as it could be a positive influence and a positive person to motivate people, then hey, I did my job. You know, it's funny because like everyone has a podcast nowadays, but you know what? People don't realize it, and you're learning this as you're doing it, that the only way to successfully have a good podcast is to constantly keep doing them. And initially, when you first start out, you're all enthused, right? You have the new equipment, you can't wait to do it. But every week, it gets harder and harder and harder. People don't realize, I've been doing this since like, I think I started Muscular Development's website in 06. So I've been doing this, and that's when I started the radio. So I've been doing it for 06. So that's like what, 16 years,
Yeah, it's a long time.
You try to do it for 6 months straight. It's tough, but you got to make it part of your repertoire. And I think that's why if you kind of treat it like you do your bodybuilding, it makes it easier to do. And then because it becomes part of your whole routine, from brushing your teeth to washing your face before you go to bed.
Well, thank God that I like doing it, because you're 100% right. Because it's, if you have some name recognition already, like somebody like yourself, the subscribers and the views kind of go up quickly. But somebody like me, it's like a diesel truck. It takes a long time before it warms up.
When I first started, I'll give you a better analogy because everyone knows me in bodybuilding, so that's not a good analogy. But I started a reptile channel, a snake breeding channel. Like I talk about my snakes and the reptiles that I breed. And I had no one watching it at first, right? I mean, because who is Dave Palumbo in terms of a reptile breeder, right? I was like sharing it on my Facebook page, so all the bodybuilding people were watching it. And they don't really, they thought it was interesting, but they really were not into snakes. And it probably took 3 years, before I started getting a very loyal following.
Yeah.
But I didn't stop doing it. And I think that's the key. And that's the secret to success in everything in life. Just don't stop doing it. When you first start bodybuilding, everyone thinks, oh, I look good. I'm getting jacked. I got a vein in my bicep. But the truth is you look like shit, and you don't really, you're deluding yourself. And that at some point you might look in the mirror and say, am I deluding myself? But just don't stop, because bodybuilding doesn't take 6 months to do. It's something you're going to do for 20 years. So people, have a very short attention span. And I think that's why there's not a lot of successful people. That's why when I see new people doing podcasts, I'm encouraging them, because I know that probably 75% of them will fail.
Absolutely. It's the truth. And it's only because they just don't want to, they don't see the instant gratification. Absolutely. So I have been a fan of yours since the late 90s. I even sent a picture of you. I think it was, I think it was 98 or 99. I sent
that was great.
Yeah, and that's when you were.
So I have so few pictures from back then.
Oh, I think that was the Atlantic States, I want to say. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure it was the Atlantic States, and probably 98. Yeah, probably I want to say 98. But I've been a fan of yours for a long time. And back then, I was living on Staten Island at the time, and I lived there for, till I moved to Jersey. Back then, there were three names that were household names in the tri-state area. It was Jason Ons, Vinny Galante, and you, as far as I'm concerned, right? Those are the three. And two of them turned pro. You never turned pro, but that's not a testament to how you weren't.
But you know what? Vinny took a long time. I actually helped Vinny turn pro. He didn't turn pro till he was in his 40s. So,
he turned pro in his masters. So back then,
and he won the USA back in early 90s.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah. He did. He
was won his class at least.
He was a great bodybuilder in his time. But back then, to be fair, it was a lot more difficult turning pro as a bodybuilder. It really was. I mean, I used to go to your seminars. I remember I went to a seminar in Queens on Queens Boulevard. You were at a gym. I forgot the name of the gym.
Was it Platinum? Was that
yes, Platinum?
Gino Sylvain, who's no longer with us, by the way. I didn't know if he passed.
Oh, I didn't know that. I went there with Ronnie Brown. I think it was Leon Brown's cousin. Ronnie Brown was Leon Brown. Yeah, it was Leon Brown's cousin, Ronnie Brown. It was a long time ago. But anyway, the most impressive thing to me were two things. You were a tremendous bodybuilder, and the fact that you didn't turn pro actually probably added to your legend, if you will, right? Yeah. But the two things that impressed me the most were your knowledge of the sport. It's uncanny, and I don't think anybody realizes this. The fact that you were always able to make money. You were, as an amateur bodybuilder, I mean, we know amateur bodybuilders that do gay for pay and have sex with fruit. And I wish I was lying about that, but it's the truth. But you were, as an amateur bodybuilder, you were always able to make money. And I don't even mean like, just hustle for a few bucks. You were always able to make a living where you could survive and live comfortably. And to me, that was the most impressive thing, because amateur bodybuilders don't make shit.
Right.
How did you just always had a knack for being able to make money?
No, I was desperately afraid that I was going to have to get a real job. Mm-hmm. And my whole goal when I got into bodybuilding was I wanted to make a living from it. And, I thought that meant that you had to turn pro, right? Because you're going to make money, you have to compete. But it really didn't mean that. And later it came to my, you create your own reality by, your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, I really did achieve everything I wanted to, because I really never had aspirations of being Mr. Olympia in my head. Like that wasn't like the driving goal. The driving goal was, can I do this sport and actually make a living from it? Like, and not have to actually work a real job. Mm-hmm. And that was always like internally, subconsciously what I wanted to do. When I saw those guys guest posing, I wanted to do those I said, man, if I can get paid to guest pose, this would be phenomenal. And then I think it was like 1, 2, 3. I did like 35 guest poses a year. I mean, I probably made about 70 grand a year just in pose, and that was cash in my pocket.
Right.
I mean, that's making a living, So and I was the kind of person that I would never say no to an opportunity to get paid to do something that I liked. Because I would see guys go to work and they hated their job.
Absolutely.
And even my dad was a teacher his whole life. And, he liked teaching people, but he was burnt out. He was like, you know what? He wanted to sit home and write because he was a writer. And I said, you know what? I don't want to have to do a job to support myself and then have to try to do the thing that I really liked on the side. I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And so if a writing assignment came along where I can write make some money, if I can do an appearance at a GNC in the city, which was a real pain in the neck. I started working for Mike Lyons. He had a talent agency, Lights, Camera, Flex for a while, and then the Lions Group. I would go into every audition. Like I would never say no to him. Dave, we got an audition in an hour. You got to get to the city. All right, I'll be on the Long Island Railroad. Meanwhile, most of these guys would be like, nah, I can't make it. It's just because you know what? Every time I went on one of those ones, I would get the job. Like the ones that no one wanted to go to. And, and then you'd make a connection there. And so, if you want to be, good at what you do, you have to immerse yourself into it. So I went all out. I went 100% in. I didn't hedge my bets in the sense that I didn't like say, all right, you know what, I got to become a police officer, or, you know what, yeah, I went to medical school, I better go back and see if I can become a doctor and do the bodybuilding. I knew that I couldn't do both. Just like you can't diet and to get lean and get huge at the same time. I knew I couldn't do both. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take a chance doing what I really like. And I don't know if I got lucky or if I created my own luck by my relentless pursuit of what I wanted to achieve. But there was some of it was like, because I said, you know what, I don't want my father to say you should have stayed in school. I wanted to be successful. And so I just did what I liked. You know, I just loved what I did, and I just did it 100%. I always gave out information for free because I saw that Bill Phillips, you know, his model of business was give out a lot of free information, right, via the magazines or whatever. And people will buy anything you sell them, basically, because they will trust you. And that's what I did. And so I gave out a ton of free information for 10 years before I ever sold a single supplement to anyone, you know?
Okay. Now, getting back to you as a bodybuilder, you never turned pro, but you were as big, and if not bigger, than a lot of the pros back then. I mean, what was the most that you actually weighed on your off season back then?
I almost made it to 320. The heaviest I ever saw the scale go was 319.
Now,
and I was very uncomfortable at 319. 300 became a comfortable weight for me.
Wow.
But no one was that big, if you remember. Dorian was like 300 off season.
Yeah. Today, everybody's 300, but back then, nobody's.
Right, but he was only Dorian. There was no one else who was 300. And I had hit 300 right after he did, because once I saw he can do it, it like unlocked something in my brain. And I said, well, I can do it too. And I was really lean at 300. So you
were genetically lean, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I came from a running background, and I think my fat metabolizing enzymes are better than everyone else's. But
I think so.
I wasn't like ripped initially, but once I got to a certain level of muscularity, I just didn't get fat anymore. I would get water retentive, from being so big, but I wouldn't get really fat. So I wore it well, and it was just a freak thing. People like to see big freaky guys.
Absolutely.
I carried a lot of mass. The promoters liked it because I can guest pose at relatively decent conditioning in the off season at that weight, and it was an attraction. So companies wanted to hire me. I was like, there wasn't any options. It was me. If you didn't want me, you had to pay Nasser 10 times what you paid me to get Nasser. So a lot of these guys had shows. They didn't want to spend $5,000 on a guest poser. I can give Dave Palumbo $1,500 and he'll do a seminar for me. That's a bargain. So that's why I got guest posing jobs, and I got a lot of jobs because I stuck out. So in essence, by not allowing me to turn pro, they kind of did me a favor because it created a niche for me. And, I was like, like I said, there wasn't a lot of big guys. Nowadays, there's 300-pound guys all over the place.
Yes.
But back then there weren't.
No.
And like I said, I had very good conditioning at that weight. So it was freaky, watching me walk around and the gym and stuff like that. I can't even imagine how many followers I would probably have on Instagram if there was Instagram back then, because you could have filmed me every single day.
You would have been a social media sensation.
I was never out of shape,
Yeah, you would have been a social media sensation. There's no question about it. Yeah. But putting on that weight was not easy.
No.
There were a lot of kids in the gym because I'm 45. And there were a lot of young guys in the gym that talk to me about working out and whatnot, and I try to give them advice and whatnot. And they say they want to put on muscle, and I try to say, well, you have to eat. And they're like, I do eat. And then they give me an example of what they eat. And they're like, well, I have a bagel and I have eggs. I'm like, no.
I have 3 eggs and a bagel.
And then I always make them watch your video of the types of shakes you used to make. So can you just tell us, in order to get to that 300 pounds, the types of shakes you used to make and how much you used to have to eat back then?
You know what? I don't think that anyone could have realistically stuck with me for more than one day and consume the amount of food I did. The only person who I think might have consumed more than me or comparable to me would be Greg Kovacs, because his wife would basically make the stuff and put it right in front of him, and he would have to eat it. He was like a machine. He drank a lot of shakes though, but he ate a lot. He ate a lot of food, and that's why he was 400 pounds. But I probably at some point, if I wasn't so lazy, I would try to recreate a day of eating for myself. I wouldn't necessarily eat all the food, but if I just prepared it all and put it in front of me and showed everyone what I consumed on a regular basis, no one would believe it.
Yeah.
Because if I ate eggs, I ate 12 whole eggs. I mean, They went whether they had to go into a blender or they had to go, you know, I had to just cook them and swallow them like, you know, almost whole, like, you know, because I would poach them and I would just basically you know, basically take the plate and just slurp them down my throat, you know, and I didn't care. I did anything I had to get the food down. You know, the shakes, the mash shakes that I made that are notorious were 12 egg whites and 12 whole eggs. I would put them into like a plastic Tupperware container, and because somehow I had this thing in my head that I was going to get like salmonella from them from drinking them raw. It would have been way easier if I didn't. So I would cook them in the microwave for a minute, and they would start to turn, like the whites would start to turn like gel-like. You know, they would actually almost start being like real eggs. And then I would throw those in the blender. So not only were they partially cooked, but they were hot.
Oh.
So I throw 12 hot eggs into the blender. Then I'm putting like a cup of apple juice, a cup of uncooked oats, okay, a packet of Metrex, which was like almost 40 grams of protein there, and about 25, 30 grams of carbs. And then I would put, what else did I put in there? I'm trying to think now. Apple juice. I think that was it. And that was, and then I had, if you remember at the time, there was like Designer Whey was out. I would put a scoop of Designer Whey. So I it had to be at least 75, 80 grams of protein in there. And I would blend this up. And when I blended it, I couldn't put the top on the blender because it was filled. I somehow figured it out. It would fill just to the top, but when it would blend, it would almost go over the top and spill over, but it didn't because I was so perfectly at measuring everything in my head that when the thing was done blending, it looked like cement in a cement mixer because it had no liquid consistency. It was completely sludge. And it was to the top of the blender. So imagine a full blender. And then I would take this blender, I'd go over my sink and I'd gulp it down, and with not even tasting it, just opening my throat up and letting the thing go down my throat. And it was so much volume and it was so thick, you know, stimulating that gag reflex that I would then have to lean over the sink like this and wait. Because if I didn't get past like 5 minutes, there was always a chance I would throw the thing up. What happened is the saliva would be running down my throat, in my mouth, and I had to try to control that, like psychologically. And sometimes I just couldn't. The whole thing would come up to the thing, and then I would make it again. I would do it again. I would not miss that shake. I would do it again, and I did this like 2 of those shakes a day, in addition to eating like 4 meals, having like 3 or 4 regular Metrex shakes with an ultra fuel, which is 100 grams of carbs. And I would do the ultra fuel Metrex shakes in the middle of the night. I would do 2 of them. So I never slept more than 3 hours without waking up and having 100 grams of carbs or 135 grams of carbs with the 38 grams of protein from the Metrex. And I did this around the clock. I used to go to the diner by my house. It was a 24-hour diner in Long Island. They knew me there. I would go there and I would eat like this. It was like a big hamburger. It was like I forget what they call it. It was like a steak burger or something, but it was a burger. It was like, it had to be a pound of beef. Okay. I would eat French fries with it. Sometimes I would have, like a whole plate of chocolate chip pancakes, and I would eat this like at midnight. And then I'd go home and I would have another, I would still eat a shake at 2 in the morning before I went to bed.
Yeah.
So it was no one could do. I'm telling you, no one was able to. People would look at me when they saw what I would do, because they would go out to eat with me, maybe having, like you said, like 3 eggs and like a
bagel,
one 2 pancakes, and I'm having like 12 eggs and 2 stacks of pancakes, and it was a ridiculous amount of food that I was consuming. And every day I went to McDonald's. There was always a McDonald's every day. 2 triple cheeseburgers, large supersized fry when they had supersized, and I would eat 2 apple pies. That was standard.
And you couldn't put body fat on.
No, and I didn't. And the funny thing was, I didn't even get fat from all this food.
Yeah.
If I didn't eat the food, I would lose weight. So it was a job. It was way harder to gain weight for me than it was to get in shape. But when I would diet pretty low carb. You would think, man, the guy's eating almost 1,000 grams of carbs in the off season. He could probably eat a lot of carbs and get in shape, but I wouldn't. I would keep my carbs like under 200, probably 150 grams of carbs a day. And that was nothing for me. Think about it. Right. And I would eat but I'd eat a lot of protein and fat. I would have 500 to almost 600 grams of protein a day. And then I would have probably, 150 to 200 grams of fat a day. So I still ate high calorie pre-contest, but I kept the carbs really pretty low for me.
So the way you were strict with your eating habits and the way you used to train too was out of control. I mean, everybody used to try to emulate you in the gym back in the day. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. Because that's, everybody tried squatting heavy and deadlifting heavy and benching heavy and doing the low volume, heavy, intense workout. But there were guys like you, and there were guys obviously like Dorian Yates, and there were other guys who took to a different level. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, when I used to watch like Road to the Olympia, they always had that every year, Road to Olympia. You used to watch the pros work out, and you could tell they were genetically gifted because they really weren't working out hard. Right. They would go, it looks like they were going through the motions.
And I hated that. That's why I worked so hard, because I knew that I had to outwork everyone, because I knew that I didn't have the genetic gifts, maybe that some of these, I had my own gifts, but obviously because I was very lean and I was able to put on a lot of size, but I kind of superseded my genetics because I knew I didn't have their structure and their propensity to add muscle real easy, because I wasn't a big guy naturally,
So those two, and then I'm trying to segue into your knowledge of PEDs and anabolics. There's always this stigma, if you will, when they see guys at your size in the 90s or early 2000s. Oh my God, he's using so much stuff. He's using so much. And they don't understand the work that goes into it, and the eating habits and the work in the gym and so on and so forth. And then the proof is in the pudding, because the guys that just rely on steroid use, they don't get the results.
Yeah.
Or they get limited results. And I see this every day at the gym. I mean, what people don't understand is the majority of guys at the gym are on some kind of performance enhancement drugs, and you just can't even tell.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're just not putting the work in, or they don't have the genetics. So what I wanted to ask you is just very basic questions for like my view. Your viewers are more sophisticated, but my viewers are usually younger guys or so on and so forth. Can you explain exactly what a steroid is, and is it that harmful for you in the long run?
Steroids are just derivatives of testosterone that bind to the androgen receptor. And when they, what they try to do is take testosterone and make it less androgenic, which is the masculinizing effects of it. Most of the side effects come from the aggression too. And they try to strip away some of that androgenic components and and have a more purely anabolic compound. The problem is when you strip away the androgen component, you also strip away some of the anabolic or muscle building component. So while DECA is, less androgenic than testosterone, it's also less anabolic. Anavar is purely anabolic, but they've stripped away so much of the androgen, they've also stripped away a ton of the anabolic. That's why it's really not very strong. That's why when guys ask me, I'm taking Anavar, I'm like, why? It's so weak.
I do the same. That's a God's honest truth. Anytime anybody tells me in the gym or whatnot that I use Anavar, I automatically think it's the guy. I automatically think you don't take anything, because it's a waste.
It's not a waste, but the problem is that it's so weak.
Girls use it.
It's girls. It's very weak, and for the price that they charge for it, because it's an expensive drug.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. You don't get any bang for your buck on it. So, that's basically steroids. I mean, they bind to the androgen receptor. Now, the toxicity aspect of steroids comes from how they're broken down. The faster acting the compound, that meaning that the shorter half-life, the quicker the liver has to break it down. If the liver has, 3 weeks to break down a shot you took, because it's slow acting, it's not really going to be toxic for your body. Whereas if your liver has to break it down in 12 hours, because it only lasts, that's the half-life of, say, Anadrol or Dianabol, now it's putting more strain on the liver. How much strain is it putting on the liver compared to you drinking an alcoholic drink? Probably not much different. So, the problem occurs when people start to abuse the stuff, because now they're putting so much into their body that their body is in constant detox. The liver is just never getting a rest.
I see.
So I always tell people, if you're going to stay on for a longer cycle, longer duration cycles, just don't use orals. There's so many injectable anabolics that are probably more effective. You don't even need to use the orals, and try to stay away from really, really fast acting compounds on a regular basis. Nothing wrong with using a little Winstrol before, your show. Or
so fast-acting compounds would be things like
trenbolone acetate, anything that has a quick half-life. You don't want to be on those for long periods of time because that puts a little more stress on the body to break them down. I've seen a lot of people come and go in this sport. Very few people have ever caused enough damage to their body from taking anabolics alone. And who knows if we could even really directly link it, that I can't even say they're that toxic. Okay. The problems occur when you're taking a lot of gear, a lot of GH, your blood pressure goes high. Now, when your blood pressure elevates, they call blood pressure the silent killer because what it does is it destroys your kidneys over a long, prolonged period of time. So, while steroids are not directly, kidney toxic, they're indirectly kidney toxic because they raise blood pressure, because they make you retain fluid. And GH is indirectly, a problem, not because there's no toxic effects of GH. The problem is that it can make you insulin resistant and it could burn your pancreas out. So you can cause blood sugar issues down the road. So are the drugs themselves really toxic? No, because they're all pretty long. It's not like you take a hit of ecstasy or you're doing you're snorting a line of crystal meth. It doesn't hit you like that. Steroids are they're hormones. They take a long time to act on the body. The problem occurs long-term usage if you're using the wrong compounds. And I think or the wrong dosages. So that's something that can be easily controlled. So if you want, and that's why I always have educated people. If you want to use steroids, you can use them, but use them wisely. Don't use them stupidly, and don't try to take the shortcut by overdoing it initially, because bodybuilding is not a 1 or 2 year sport. It's something you're going to do for 10, 15 years.
Right.
So you got to have a pace, so to speak. And, everyone wants instant gratification, and they think if they take more, they're going to get better results quicker. And that's just not the case. Your body can only build so much muscle so quickly,
I have 2 more questions, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you're limited with time. What would you consider? Because I've spoken to people, and when I competed, I obviously used, and I've spoken to people like, oh my God, they're using so much. And then I've spoken to people and go, oh, you're not using enough. Yeah. Where is the belt? What would you consider abuse as opposed to, not using enough? Like how many milligrams of test or tren or orals or growth? What would you consider abusive and not abusive?
I found the sweet spot of testosterone was about 1,000 milligrams per week. That's the way you seem to get the most results with manageable side effects. When I went over 1,000 to 1,200 or 1,400, I've tried. I felt terrible. I felt like I had the flu. That's when my blood pressure. I started retaining excessive amounts of fluid. I was always like profusely sweat. So I realized that my body that was the limit, 1,000. And you know what the funny thing was? Bob Grushkin told me a couple times. I only talked to him a few times back in the day.
Now, who was Bob Grushkin?
Bob Grushkin was one of the initial real gurus who first started out. A lot of guys went to Grushkin back in the day. Casito learned everything he learned from Grushkin.
Okay.
And my friend Doug took me to his house, and his sweets, he always told his thing was 1,000 milligrams a week. And a lot of guys didn't want to do that. They thought back in the late 80s, early 90s, they thought that was crazy. I started a little later, and my friend Doug said, you got to do 1,000 milligrams a week. I'm like, that's not too much. He goes, no. And I used it. I felt good on it. And that's when I noticed, like, I kind of went to the next level, so to speak, with girthiness. I think because people, when they first start, they think, oh, testosterone is going to cause all these side effects. I'm going to get gyno. I'm going to get gyno. I'm going to get water. That comes with everything. So if you're not willing to accept the side effects, the what I call the annoying side effects, then don't even do bodybuilding.
Now, what a lot of times I hear on your show talking about guys that abuse and take so much, but in my world, I guess in the regular, New Jersey, Staten Island, Brooklyn knockaround gyms, it always seems as if these guys want to use stuff, but they're so afraid. They're like, they only want to use a little bit. They want to use Anavar. They want to use 500 milligrams of test and that's it. And they're scared to use anything else. What do you tell people like that? Because I run into people like this all the time.
But you know what? Those are the same guys that are using 900 milligrams of trenbolone because some asshole online told them that you don't need a lot of testosterone. Use 1,000 milligrams of Deca a week, or 900 milligrams of trenbolone a week because it's an anabolic. You're not going to. It's bullshit. That's even way more unhealthy than what your base should always be testosterone. Now, whether you want to take 500 milligrams a week or you want to take 1,000 milligrams a week, that's a personal decision. I'm not going to preach to that. Right. I found in my life and in my people I helped, 1,000 milligrams is the sweet spot.
I see.
Let's say you're new. You want to do 500 milligrams a week, okay? And you want to take an anabolic with it. So you take 400 milligrams of DECA with it to start off with. And that's a nice cycle. You can do that for 8 weeks, and then you can change your compounds. So like 500 milligrams of testosterone and maybe, 400 milligrams of equipoise a week, or something like that. It's long-acting injectables, no toxicity, changing up the compounds every 8 weeks so the body's receptors the androgen receptor is being constantly tricked a little bit. That works. It's when you start throwing in like Dianabol. I get these guys, they're like, they only want to use 500 milligrams of testosterone, but they'll take 100 milligrams of Anadrol a day, and then they can't eat because
kills your appetite. Kills it.
Any kind of strong oral kills your appetite.
That always happened with me with Anadrol. Absolutely.
I tell people this: what do you want to accomplish? And for most of the people who come to me, they want to be the best bodybuilder they can be, or they want to turn pro, or they want to win a regional show. All right, well, I'm going to tell you what to do, the right way to do it. If you're a beginner, I'm not going to tell you to take 1,000 milligrams a week. Okay. Right. But let's say they've been doing cycles, for the last year or so, 2 years, and putzing around doing everything wrong. Let's do 1,000 milligrams of testosterone a week with an anabolic with it and see what your progress is. Try it. What do you get to lose?
Right.
And, invariably everyone feels great on that because first of all, long acting injectables keep a very, very steady blood levels. Okay. And when you don't fluctuate, you don't break out as much, you don't get mood swings as much. When you're using these like fast acting, whether they be orals or injectables, you're up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Your moods are all over the place. Your body doesn't respond as well. Your body likes regularity. So that's why I became a very big fan of the long acting injectables. Now, the only thing you really have to manage is DHT, dihydrotestosterone, and estrogen. Are you a big converter of one or the other? You could actually get your DNA tested now and find out if you are. I'm not a big estrogen converter, but I'm a big DHT converter. So I address that. I take finasteride. I have a lot of guys taking my Testolized product to eliminate or lower their DHT levels, and it works like a charm. I even have women taking it who have thinning hair and who get acne, and it takes. So you have to learn to manage a couple of things. But once you get the sweet spot down, now it's just a matter of training. Steroids just make everything work better. Okay. Right. So if you don't have your diet down and you don't take the right nutritional supplements in the right dosages, because those vitamins, minerals, and trace metals are all the cofactors and all the chemical reactions that run in your body. So you need that. You need the right food. Okay. You need to train properly and take days off from the gym. And the anabolics just kind of make everything do things better. But before I ever took a single anabolic, and this is something that everyone should think about, get the diet down, get your training down, get your rest down, and get your supplementation down, your natural supplementation. Make that perfect. Once you are perfect and you can't gain another pound of muscle in the gym naturally, now add the anabolics on top of that, and you will see magic happen that never happened before. And people will think you're taking 100 times the dosage you did. The first time I ever took anabolics, I had my diet was so perfect and my supplements were great and my training was pretty good. So I responded really well to anabolics. Why do you think Kai Green and Ronnie responded so well? Because everything else was perfect. Yes. They just kind of made everything work better. But if you start off with anabolics, and you're not eating right, and you're not training right, and you don't sleep, you go out on the weekends partying, you're not going to make any significant gains.
That's
no
right.
way.
That's right. Now, as far as the supplements go, I have your shirt on. I wore it specifically because I know I was interviewing you. Yeah, I know. I got this at the New York Pro in 2012.
Wow.
So Species Nutrition, you go to, what's the website?
Speciesnutrition.com.
Speciesnutrition.com. And you actually have pretty much everything you just said as far as the Testolized, the vitamin, mineral supplements. My favorite, honestly, is the Fibrilize. Me and my wife both use that.
That's my best selling product.
Me and my wife both use that. It is a lifesaver, your protein is one of the best, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So Species Nutrition and RX Muscle for all your up-to-date bodybuilding news and education. And one thing I have to say about RX Muscle is your ability to explain and your intelligence of the sport is so tremendous. I've gained so much knowledge, but sometimes when you have guys on like Milos, and God forbid you have Milos and Chris Aceto on, I have to shut it off because I can't even follow. I don't even know what the hell you guys. It's like a different language. I'm like,
you know what? This is what I believe. I have my own beliefs, and whenever I give information out, I always back it up by science. So I'm never just spouting at the mouth. Okay.
Right.
But I think it's important to debate other people who are intellectuals. I won't debate morons out there, because it's like you might as well just talk to the wall, because there's no, they can't. And you know what happens?
And you've had people.
I wind up getting these guys on because people say, have them on. And then what happens? You know what happens? Even the experts, and I'm not mentioning any names.
Yeah.
What happens is I do an interview with them and I debate them. And then they come out looking really bad. And you know what people say? They don't say, Dave was right. You know, some people do. They say Dave set this guy up. Meanwhile, they wanted to come on and debate me. And then when I actually give them the facts and they can't dispute it and they have to agree with me, then I'm the bad guy all of a sudden. So I don't even want to even be bothered with that anymore, because look, I'm not trying to win anything. I'm just trying to put information out there so that people can make decisions that are the right decisions,
right?
And then understand the science. And that's why I teach my Secrets to Becoming a Diet Guru course. I don't hold back anything. I want people to know how to do it. There's no secrets. And I think a lot of people don't like the fact that I give out a lot of free information, because it makes them as coaches not seem as relevant, which is bullshit. Because you know what? You can know everything, but it's impossible to advise yourself. You're still going to hire a coach.
That's the God's
Don't be intimidated as a coach by information. Put it all out there. Let everyone know how much you know or don't know. That's fine. But if you're a good coach, you're a good coach. Who cares? You're still going to have people coming to you.
Yeah. Now, Dave, it's the God's honest truth, because you don't know me from a hole in the wall. And I must have emailed you questions at least a dozen times. And by the next day, you would give me the answer. I wouldn't even...
Yeah, I always answer everyone's emails. There's not a single person that I don't answer their emails, because I believe that everyone should have the ability to ask me questions and get them answered by me. I might answer very quickly, but I got to remember, I answer every single email myself. No one answers my emails.
You're not a normal guy. You're a busy dude.
No, but I'm a lunatic. But you know what? That's what I like to do. It goes back to I think back, whenever I think like I'm overwhelmed with emails, I say, you know what? You wanted this. You wanted to be able to make a living doing what you're doing right now. Don't complain about it. And that's why I put my head down. If I got to miss sleeping an extra 2 hours a night, I put my head down and I finish all my emails every night.
I appreciate it, man. And because you're a great ambassador of sport.
Thank you.
I'm not going to mention any names, because there are other people I've reached out to for help or reached out to do an interview, and they just shit all over it. And it's true, and it's terrible. But I'm not going to mention names. But just know that, you're appreciated. And I hope you understand how appreciated you are from people like me who've been friends for years, and the young guys coming up that want to learn. And like I said, RX Muscle, the best YouTube channel for bodybuilding intelligence and knowledge, and Species Nutrition. Great company, great product, man. Really appreciate it. Dave, thank you so much for everything.
Good luck with the channel. Keep working hard, and I'm sure you'll be on top one day.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.